Hello everyone, I'm Gabriele Chiapparini. Welcome to Small Photobook Cult. Today's book, Some Kind of Fable in Fire, is a photographic exploration of a series of UFO sightings that took place in a small town in Northern Finland during the 1960s. Inspired by her grandfather writing on the subject, Maria Lax combines her own surreal, color-saturated photographs with family archival images and newspaper clippings to create a mystical and ambiguous narrative about this local and personal history. The work blends fact and fiction to delve into themes of folklore, loneliness, and the fear of the unknown. Welcome to the episode 39 of Small Photobook Cult. We are here with Maria Lax. Hello, Maria. I'm really glad to have you here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure. We put a lot of effort for doing this episode, right?
Finally, we found a time, so it's good.
Yeah, I'm really glad about that because you people have to know that Maria is working the new book, so she was a bit full of things to do for the new project.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. The internal struggle and the external struggle, but yeah.
Okay, but today we're going to speak about this one that's unluckily it's sold out the first and the second edition, but this is a chance to watch this amazing book at least. What?
No, I was just saying that I love promoting things of like, well, look what you could have had.
Yeah, I understand. Do you want to introduce the work, the project? And I will start to flip through the pages.
Yes, so this book is Some Kind of Heavenly Fire. It's my first photo book that I made now 5 years ago, which seems crazy. And it's about UFO sightings in my hometown in Northern Finland. Which is a small town, like 2 hours from the Russian border, very close to the Arctic Circle. And in the 60s and 70s, there is a wave of UFO sightings of these mysterious lights sort of following people home, lighting up the forest at night, and all sorts of sightings that were quite disturbing. And my granddad, who was a journalist at the time working locally, he wrote a book about it. And it's all of this research is based on book. Like that was the Kickstarter for this project.
Did you discover your grandfather's book when, where?
It was always in the bookshelf growing up, but for some reason, I think this happens a lot. We're kind of ignorant of our family history or certain things. We sort of take them for granted, maybe for a long time. And so I had never read it till it was like around 2014, 2015 when I read it, and I was kind of like, holy shit, like these stories are mental. What's happening? How have I not known anything about it? And I was trying to talk to my granddad to ask more questions, but he had dementia that was really far advanced at that point. So he really couldn't give me any of the answers. I asked my dad because it was his father, and my dad sort of had vague recollections, but he was like, I don't know that much about it either. And so because I am a very nosy person and I also get super fixated on things, I took the book and I wrote down every single name that was mentioned in my granddad's book. And I from this name list, I found out who was still alive. And I started finding contact details and phone numbers for every single person who was still around. And I pretty much started conducting research without really knowing where I was taking it. Getting in touch with people, going to knock on their doors, being like, hi, I'm so-and-so's granddaughter. Like, could you talk to me about UFOs? And obviously that was quite, like, cold calling people like that is quite random. Like, some people were really like, we haven't talked about it for decades. Like, what's your intention and what are you going to do with the story? And are you going to make us a laughing stock all over again? And so it was a process of sort of winning trust and establishing myself I sort of had to figure out what I wanted to do with it. And at the same time, I sort of started taking pictures alongside reimagining all these stories that really captured my imagination.
And what pushed you to start this project? Like, why you have this need to start to take pictures based on that book?
Well, I mean, I guess I had been sort of looking for my thing for a long time. I was in a point in my life where nothing really felt right. I'd been in film school, studied cinematography. I dropped out. I knew that I wanted to make something, but I didn't know whether I wanted to be a film director, whether I wanted to be, I was sort of looking for myself in that time and place. And I've been away from Finland since I was 19, more or less. So I left when I was really young. And when I sort of went back there, like a lot of things had changed. People had passed away, people were ill, times and places had changed. So I guess I had this need to reconnect with my family history and with myself and sort of be on that journey of discovery of like, who am I? Where do I come from? And essentially it turned into that full cliche of what never made sense in film school is like, write about what you know. Like whatever you make should be what you know. And I'm like, but I know nothing, you know? So it was this sort of really open-ended journey, really, that became this book.
And would the project have existed if your grandfather had been able to answer to you?
I'm sure it would have, but I think it would have been very different. I feel like he would have contributed a different kind of perspective. I think you're right in the sense that there is a key motivation was that I couldn't connect with him. And I think there is a thing where, you know, our parents, like grandparents, like they're always like somewhat, like even they're the closest people to us, they're always like distant figures in a way because we see them not as like necessarily like fully rounded people, but we see them from this sort of carer child position, you know? And so sometimes it almost feels like people have had these secret lives before we've then turned up. And it was like exploration of that. And because he couldn't open it up to me and he hadn't for some reason ever before, or maybe just I didn't ask. So yeah, I think it would have always happened, but now it just became an exploration into also how my granddad, for example, was as a person, because people talked a lot about him. And the only reason I had access to these stories and why people ended up opening up to me was because they really liked him and they really respected him. And that's what people said to me, that they're like, he was a good man. So of course I'll talk to you.
Why did the spottings focus in that specific area from your research?
Well, the book, like everything else that I make, there is always like underlying context for it. So I'm very focused every time on like what we believe in and what the stories are that we tell, but I'm more sort of turning the lens towards the people and sort of what's happening in our lives or people's lives at the time. And what was happening in Finland at the time in the late 60s, early 70s, was the economy was sort of going through a massive change. After the Second World War, all the war veterans were giving a plot of land and said, you know, you've survived the war, congratulations, now you can set up your own farm and that'll be your livelihood. But by the time, you know, they got to the 60s, there was so much agricultural produce being produced that there was this concept called the butter mountains. So there was like too much of everything to go around. There wasn't enough people consuming the produce. So the government very quickly went, okay, we can't do this anymore. We have to cut down on this. And that was one of the factors of Northern Finland, you know, the area where I'm from, is very heavily rural, agricultural. And so with the cuts happening, but also technology being going fast and work moving to factories and everything, it just meant that overnight, so people had their lives changed. And suddenly what was meant to be a solid future wasn't solid anymore. That's a very long answer to sort of like the political context of this era, but it was really drastic. When you can't farm land anymore, when your livelihood doesn't essentially exist anymore, is not sustainable, you can't do it, you don't have any other option than to go and look work for elsewhere. And for this town, it was Sweden, it was southern Finland. And so most people just left to go try and find work in factories and go and find work anywhere. And so my hometown sort of lost 50% of its population in a time span of a few years, which you can imagine that, and that is quite drastic. And so it was a desperate time. In other words, that would have been the short answer. It was a really desperate time. And so, like, when I started researching the UFOs, what sort of came through it was that the UFOs were a reflection of people's relationship with how they saw the future, whether future was something to be afraid of, or whether lights and the UFOs were a sign that something hadn't been forgotten.
It's a really...
Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No. It's perfect. It's perfect, Maria. I'm glad you're doing it. It's really similar to the project and the story of Lewis about Port Talbot in UK. Both places had this, struggling with the work, the money, the economy in general, and in both places, apparently there are this spotting of UFOs. That it's quite curious.
I don't think it's curious in the sense that, especially like because this is set in the 60s and early 70s, and this was a big turning point historically for the whole world because that was a time there was a lot of upheaval. 1968 was like the crazy year, but then there was moon landings. So technology was taking leaps that we'd never seen before. In a sense, like suddenly this new territory was conquered. And it just makes sense that sort of people's fears and hopes are then directed towards this new unexplored territory. I think it makes total sense. But what makes this, why I called my book Some Kind of Heavenly Fire is that, essentially this is part of the Bible Belt of Finland. It's super religious. I'm sure that some people are going to be really upset about me calling it, but it's true. And so there was this huge conservative religious part of the population as well who did experience some of this. So this was the clash of the old and the new in so many different ways. And some people didn't outright say like, oh, it's the UFOs. But some people said it's some kind of heavenly fire. So it is almost like it comes from God. I think it doesn't matter what the time or what the setting is, but we really turn to faith and belief and signs and cling on to hope or project fears onto a lot of things. I think, you can see it right now, what's happening in the world. Like people are, I think, more interested in that in a long time in crystals and horoscopes and all sorts. And also religion is becoming more popular again.
Yeah.
Sorry, by the way, I'm sat on a very squeaky chair, so like
I cannot hear.
There's a lot.
I cannot hear that
stuff in this. Okay.
And how much have films and TV series visually influenced this project?
Not hugely. I'm a big fan of Steven Spielberg. Jurassic Park's my favorite film of all time. So I think that was a big influence because growing up with all of that, I think that work influenced it. I think a lot of it is then also sort of colours, like the Moomins. That's a TV series, the cartoon. Like the Moomins is a big influence, and it always has been. And so I think Spielberg and the Moomins are like the biggest two influences.
So movies from the 90s.
They are. Yeah, that's it's quite a nostalgic project. Like, I think is quite heavily laden with nostalgia. Mm-hmm. It's not a documentary project in the sense that I'm trying to find the truth of the emotion, but I'm not like documenting landscape straight up, there's lighting going on, there's everything else. So it then makes sense that things that are nostalgic to me visually, whether it's Jurassic Park or whether it's the Moomins or, whether it's E.T., like that will then come into the work.
And what do you think is this link between this nostalgia and the project?
Well, I guess, nostalgia is a funny emotion. I think it gets a word in general, especially in work. I think it gets a bad rep a lot of the time. Like some people are like, it's this nostalgic bullshit, but we're all nostalgic for something. And I think essentially nostalgia is also longing for something that can never again be. And I think I am sort of missing in this, what's really evident, I think, in all of the photos that I look at, because it's all been taken near my parents' house where I grew up, or the roads that I would travel, to get there. It's what I can see in the pictures. And I think what also comes through is kind of mourning or longing or just wanting to sort of bring something to life that isn't there. So in some ways, it's also a ghost story. And all of my angles are very removed from the scene. Like I'm far away, I'm observing, but I'm not ever in it. And for the project, there's a lot of archive I got from, say, the newspaper that my granddad founded, and he, was a journalist as well. So there's newspaper archive, but then there's family album stuff. So I think that sort of adds a layer of context and, in a way, like visual grittiness, but then it also adds a nostalgic thing.
And you make real places unreal. Is there a specific location that represents a particular challenge in this process?
Yeah, it's interesting that, because it's not really ever... Well, in this one, some of it wasn't conscious. There's that house where you flick through... Sorry, I've completely lost the train of thought. This one.
Okay.
Like my grand uncle used to live in this house, and it's all like very familiar. But I think it's also the context of looking at places that are so familiar to you, you know everything by heart, but then when you go there and people changes and you've changed, you sort of see it in this kind of different kind of way. There's a filter and there's a barrier between you and what was. And I think that also adds to the layer of it sort of visually becomes a bit uneasy, and it sort of adds this weird, surreal feeling to it.
And in general, in the project, how did you create the images? Do you start from a single witness account and you try to replicate that, the feeling, or from something that you had in your mind in general?
I mean, there are some things that were like, okay, well, some kind of heavenly fire, which came from the quotes in the book. And it's kind of like they give you visual pointers. But then a lot of these, both of these photos are from my parents' home. And a lot of it was me trying, and this is the view from my parents' home, going away into my granduncle's home, whose house we just looked at. So all of these are, I think, me repeating patterns of travel, and because it was just a short walk. So I think, sorry, again, I'm just like completely, my mind's just gone blank, but it's just capturing kind of what I see, but trying to capture the weirdness and the uneasiness that I was also feeling about whatever I was going through at the time. So the stories really made me reimagine the landscape. But then because also in some ways I was the alien in the landscape, so it did really affect on how I wanted to shoot things. But then the third thing was that because this was my first project, I'd never really done photography in a sense that I was like, I didn't have this grand goal of like, this will be a book and this is the plan and this is projects, draft and outline. And I didn't have any of that. And I think my objective for myself was to shoot stuff that I enjoy. So that was a big factor of it. Like, I just want to make shit that I like.
Yeah, and you decide to use a lot of flashes and probably long exposure sometimes. It's a really specific way to take pictures. And for example,
and it's like, sorry, go.
No, go.
No, well, I was going to say that it's also a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It especially when it's like minus 35 outside, like it's dumb. Also because it was that exploration of like, okay, I've got this idea, how am I gonna figure it out? And like this picture that we have here, there's northern lights in the sky. So the nature really had an immense impact on all of it because there's nothing there. Like it's just old people and reindeer, So landscape also, it's kind of like a character in this. And it was a way of working of like, I didn't have money. I didn't have anything. I used my dad's old like piece of shit camera, which was great. But it wasn't like I had like all this like brand equipment, So that kind of forced an approach on me. That was for somebody coming from like, I knew how to light for cinema, but I didn't know how to light for flash. So I would have never been able to shoot it with flash in a comfortable kind of way. So I think that limitations were a good thing because it kind of forced my hand in how to approach it and how to figure it out.
What about this picture, for example, the one of the gas station? How do you build it?
Well, that gas station happens to be a place that I looked at for most of my life, so I knew that it was there. And I think one of the key factors, and it's a crazy color, when you do a long exposure, is a pretty mad place. But what also makes it unique, a lot of the shots in this book actually, and we should talk about another one soon, but it was a very foggy time. Even in the middle of the winter, we had this like really heavy fog that was unheard of, which is amazing for light. As we know, when you do long exposures, the light sort of spreads everywhere and it just filters it nicely and it has this effect that is beautiful. Some of it was very, very unusual settings. I've not really seen it since. So I don't know what was going on in the climate, but it was really heavy northern lights when I was shooting this and really heavy fog.
I never saw northern lights. It's one of my objectives before to die.
Well, I always tell people because they go in cycles of 5 or 6 years. And so there's like now I think last year was a big peak year. Actually, my brother just sent me a picture of northern lights yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So they're kicking off again. And then obviously growing up where I did, like I've seen them a lot. They're still amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine. And is there a specific location that surprised you in how it transformed through your lens? Like you took the picture and then you watch it and you thought, fuck, this is really great.
Yes. I mean, this is not going to be the answer that you sort of think, and it's not the answer that I thought I was going to give. But actually, the most surprising image in the whole book is the reindeer in this. This guy wasn't going to be in the book. I didn't. And again, this was another mad, because this is on the doorsteps of my parents' house. And this was one of because I'd sort of go around and I'd never have any lights with me, really. And this happened to be the one time that I had borrowed like a on-camera flash. And I was like, I'm not really getting any of the results that I want. Like it looked too harsh and didn't look good. And I didn't really know what to do with it. And then I think I'd been walking around and shooting and I was freezing, and I got to the house. It was probably like stupid o'clock. I was there with my parents when I was shooting this, and I remember just hearing this weird sound next to me, but because it's so pitch black you can't see anything. And it was like that classic horror film thing of like, well, there's something out there. And all I have is pretty much this flash on the camera. So I thought I was just like flash it, and I took a bunch of photos at random. And it was a herd of reindeer just standing there, kind of like grunting. And there's something about this photo of that kind of, like, it's so, because it's the reindeer husbandry area where I'm from. So this reindeer to me is like very Northern Finnish, but visually, like, it's not something that I imagined being in the book. But there's something about the grass being frozen and the fact that it's from my parents' doorstep, but it almost looks like another dimension, that kind of made it in. Not that it's a particularly great photo, to be honest. Like, I think it's kind of ugly. I think that's kind of why I like it.
Yeah, I understand why. It's also one of the pictures that take you back on Earth for some reason. Like, you are looking at pictures like this one where you can think that you are seeing something weird or not from this Earth. But it's beautiful that you decide to put also a picture like this one, that it's look like you are looking for something that you don't understand, but in the end it's just a deer.
That's great.
I don't know if it makes sense.
It makes total sense. And that essentially what the story is all about, It's kind of is reality bending because of the circumstance. It's reality bending because the emotions or the desperation or the hope. We all know that is sort of reality can shapeshift and start looking like something really otherworldly. I think there was also this thing once I started making this into a book, or I was like, okay, there's a project here that is clearly taking shape. I understood that as much as I had these like beautiful, really pretty, shiny landscape pictures, I was like, that is not the story. It's not the pink petrol stations and the red lights in the woods, and like that's too shiny. It's just too slick in a way. And this story is about desperation in a small town that is really poor area, There's so much shit going on. And that's why then these pictures of reindeer and, family archive and all of that started finding its way in. And that's why how this book became this more like a scrapbooky kind of feel, because the motivation was almost like a journalist who's researching something. It's tape bits of newspaper. There's something that was kind of like the reindeer is probably the turning point. Like, these pictures are also like ugly. Not I can't call my granddad ugly, It's like, but, those two pictures before you sort of flip up this tape picture, like, they're like, the fuck, what is that? Like, it's not a nice picture, but it adds something because it's weird, but it's real. And I think it's like my dad's torch and a hat on the massive box freezer that my parents used to have in the living room. So it's kind of, and the winter sun being really low, and it just adds something to it.
Yeah, I agree. All the work, I think, take a lot of power, like each picture from the others. It's not just about single pictures.
Yeah. And that's always like, I think the challenge of making a photo book is like, just because the temptation is just put the nice picture one after the other, but sometimes it's to like the photo that you are quite uncomfortable with and how it just looks. It kind of, just makes it stronger as a project.
And when it happened that you start to feel that the project can be a book?
I don't know how it came about. It just sort of came about with being introduced to Keith, or meeting Keith, and then he was sort of, in a very direct way, he was like, right, well, what have you got? And I was like, well, I've got these two projects. There's this one about UFOs. And he was like, right, tell me more about that. And it was then that I sort of started really having to put it together, because obviously I had loads of photos. Like, there's a lot of nice pictures that never made it into this book. And so that's when I really started working with it with intention in a way. So quite late in the stage, I'd already already shot it all. I'd already like thought about stuff like, okay, if there's this book, if this is a book, this is how I want the cover text to be, like, you know, these are the colors. Like, I really knew a lot about this world. And then I knew that it was fully finished when I went back to Finland. It was like 2019. I went back to Finland trying to shoot more, and I just couldn't. I was like, there's nothing else for me. I've shot everything. I was sort of like going through everything, driving around. I was like, there's absolutely nothing else that I can do. And so I was like, right, it's done.
Yeah, it's a good way to understand that it's done.
Oh, and it's I don't know if you get this yourself, but it's almost like repulsion to a project as well. You're like, oh, not this again. Like, done. I want it out of my life in the best possible way. But it's just like that absolute upness. Sometimes a good thing.
I like the fact that in your work there is a really like a weird definition of truth. Like, and I want to know, how do you define truth in your work, and what is your intention in presenting this ambiguous narrative to the public?
How many hours have you got? Because this is
It's okay.
I sort of set out to make this particular project because, you know, this is where I come from. It's a very, you know, it's a lot. Sometimes it's like on a national scale, it's kind of like that north-south divide. Like, we're the hillbillies and the rednecks, and it's a Bible Belt, and we're like the farmer idiots or whatever. Based on accents, and you know, you get a lot of labels onto people. And then when the story broke in the 60s and 70s, a lot of the national media was laughing at people. So people became a laughing stock. It was horrific. There was cartoons of, you know, mocking these idiots up north, like seeing aliens. It was quite brutal. It was quite a vicious time. Whilst these people are losing their livelihood, you know, like, it was really a heartbreaking time. And so I knew that when I start dealing with this stuff, what my business is not like going up to people and be like, right, so what did you see or didn't you see? Or like, you know, and start somehow, it's not my place to start placing any judgment of what's true or what's not. Like, all I can do is to approach people and ask them to tell me their truth, essentially, which is the story. And it was, you know, I put like an ad in the newspaper of being like, come and meet me in the local library on a Wednesday at like 3 or 4 p.m. And if you want to talk to me. So it's very much that. And I'm very honored that people felt comfortable enough to tell me of what they saw from a very heartfelt place. But then if I would have started asking them of like, what was it? You know, are you sure you saw this? Like, that would have just felt really disrespectful. Because like, who the fuck am I to say what they've experienced or what they haven't? That's also the reason why there's no pictures of people's faces. There's no portraits in the book. I shot them. I took a lot of photos. Then I realized that if I place portraits of people in the book, like, everybody's going to waste a lot of time thinking like, are these people crazy? Like, are they not crazy? Can I trust them? Are the aliens real? Are they not? And what I'm really trying to is to say that these were people surviving in a really difficult time, in a really difficult place. Like, and you know, the whole concept of what is true and what is not true, especially in 2025, like, it's very very interesting. Who do we believe and who do we not believe? And now it feels like everybody is sort of the source of truth. So that's a longer conversation. Here I was sort of trying to be as open and trustworthy for the people that decided to open up to me. I could. It wasn't so long. I mean, no, this is like why this was the introduction to the subject of truth in photography. This was the first chapter. No, I think then, truth is a big word. Like, it's like one tiny person on this planet, and like, I then feel like I'm wielding around this, like, whatever. What do we wield around? A hammer of what's true and what's not true. Like, that would feel really arrogant, and that would feel really careless in a subject that is like this. And I haven't done it. And then I do get a lot of people like emailing me or messaging me on social media being like, yeah, but what are they? Like, what, that doesn't matter. Like, what caused this? To me, that doesn't matter at all. What matters is what people believed, because that says so much more. And what about the text? You decided to put this handwriting text in the book. Yeah, my handwriting that had to be so heavily photoshopped because nobody could read it. And it was really painful for Jan, who designed the book. Like, he was just like, Christ. At first, I was like, right, I'm going to get an old person to write all this text. And I was like, why? I think it was important, again, for the context to have a bit of a clue there. And the text is sort of a compilation of some of the interview bits that I've translated, some of the quotes that people gave me, or, some of the bits from newspaper, because it was a story that was in Finnish, but obviously I want it to be universal. So I wanted to have something there in English as well that is not just newspaper clippings in Finnish, because, then there'd be 5 people buying the book who understand fully what's going on. And I felt like that was a bit unfair. That's the background for that.
So now I have a weird question, and probably I'm gonna delete it from the final output of this episode. But if these photos,
I think you need to keep it in, because you're saying you're about to delete it. I suppose that's when the good stuff is coming in.
So yeah, you have to keep it. Or maybe I'm just gonna to leave this part without the rest. I'm gonna to delete from now.
No, you can go. You can go off record. Oh.
If these photos could have a smell, what smell do you think it will be?
I love this question. You definitely have to keep it in, because you know what? In my exhibition last year, I had smells. I'm obsessed with smells, and they're the last thing that you will remember, that will remain lodged in your brain, because it's so primal. But that's a difficult question to answer. It would be there would be a hint of smoke, a very sort of cold, crisp winter night. There would be a hint of petrol. I love the smell of petrol, especially like the engine fumes at the petrol station, then you get a headache. But something like that, because there's so many tractors and snowmobiles and chainsaws, and it's a very rural smell, that kind of like petrol and smoke. The smell of your clothes when you come in from the outside. So a bit of that. Then also this kind of like slightly decomposing wood, of a slight woody smell, and probably a slight hint of very old tobacco smoke that's sort of like so deeply ingrained in the corners of the building that you can't get rid of it.
So now we have to wait for an essence made with these components.
Yeah, I'm not sure that would be a smell that a lot of people would like.
No, probably,
but it's definitely a smell that would like evoke a lot of memories. And definitely.
How do you achieve to have the smells like in the exhibition?
Well, I'm very lucky in the sense that I have a friend who makes perfumes, Maya and Jai. I started shooting her pictures a very long time ago. So she sort of made a selection of scents. It was for another photo series, but she made a selection of scents that we went to take pictures for together. And that's how it sort of happened. And she's done that before, because we realized when we started working together that she's got scents that have like that hint of tobacco or leather or smokiness, or even a bit of petrol, or that like mossy, foresty smell. So it's been a good combination.
Yeah, it is. It can be really powerful.
Yeah. But you also risk, alienating a lot of people, because it was quite hard to do scents in an exhibition space. Because I am aware that, there's people who are really sensitive to smell, and that kind of means that they might not be able to enjoy the exhibition if they just can't enter the space. And they were in containers, you lift the lid and you can kind of experience that. But I think it's nice to just have a bit more dimension to any project, really. So I normally have sound made by another friend. So I normally design soundscapes for all the exhibition as well.
Do you have a specific music or sound that you suggest to listen while watching this book?
I would say, it depends. So many, I've got a whole playlist, but it's quite intense. I would say if you can find some sort of organ music, church organ music, that's very good. Otherwise, in a sort of backup scenario, Philip Glass's Koyanis Katsi soundtrack is very good. And there's a song called Prophecies. It has that kind of like good church organ vibe. So that, because that's the sort of sound of the area to me.
And do you learn something during the time you made this project that can help other photographers to do a better job?
Yeah, I guess I learned a lot, but this is actually a difficult question to answer in a like short, concise, non-personal way. I think it is, just do what you like, which is like the worst advice ever. I would hate myself if somebody said that. I'd be like, fuck you. But it is, everything's difficult. Everything's earning money as a photographer is difficult. Getting a project done is difficult. So like, you better at least like the pictures.
I agree.
Because I've shot projects where I've looked at the work and I'm like, I'm not even shooting like I would shoot. I'm shooting like some imaginary National Geography, hell, I'm not even able to say that. National Geographic photographer. You kind of go into a project role playing somebody else because you've seen this thing once that, somebody might like. And then you're like, no, this is shit. Nothing to do with me. And those projects, invariably, they never see the light of day. So I think that's the hardest thing, to be really critical of, like, do I actually like what I'm making?
And the very last question, can you suggest us some books and photographer to invite in one of the future episodes of this podcast?
Well, this is kind of bad because I'm like, who have you had? Have you had Francesco Merlini? You probably had him,
yes,
right?
It was one of the first.
Yeah, because I'm like, whoever I can say who've already had them. Well, there's a lot of people who are very dead who I'd like to listen to on a podcast, because I'm like, I have so many questions, but I don't know why they're always like people who are very much unalive.
This is a problem for the podcast, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a bit difficult. So one of my favorite photo books is, drumroll, The Blast Furnace by Ian MacDonald.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's on my shelf. I always recommend that to everybody. And I think it would kind of tie together in a sense with the Port Talbot stuff, because this is not shot in Wales, shot in North England, inside a blast furnace. So it's people doing incredibly dangerous manual labor. It's shot in such a beautiful way. It's like a photo book that I'm like, shit, I wish I could have made that.
I'm going to look for it.
So even if it's not, look for it. Even if it's not possible, then I would just like everybody to look at it.
I'm going to look at it for sure. And if you come in your mind some other names, just send me a message.
I mean, there's so many, but like, I feel like we've had a chat with so many people already that I would suggest that I'm just going to save you the effort of going, done it. So that's that. Because, there's also photographers. There's Esko Manniker, who's from the same town that I'm from, but he's my sort of parents' generation, and it's interesting that he was photographing these places with people I then photographed for this book, and I've got his book The Female Pike, which is absolutely wonderful. I don't know how many interviews he does, so you could set yourself a challenge. And then there's also a photo book that I really love, which is Mask by Phyllis Glembo. So that could be another. Okay,
I wrote it down. I'm going to have to check for all these 3 books. I don't know these books, so I'm really happy to go and watch.
Yeah, all those 3 are like in my top favorite. Like especially The Female Pike is fantastic, and I think it's quite hard to find.
Yeah,
I've been lucky enough to get it.
This is one of the problems with photo books, that they sold out.
Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah, it is. At least it's beautiful to see that there is some interest around a work. And
it's like, it's a nervousness as well. Like now that with this new book coming out, like I don't know, like what if people think is shit? Then I've spent 2 years of my life moving to a different country shooting pictures that everybody's like, well, this is a bit of shit. So it's terrifying.
Do you think is it possible?
Yeah, of course it's possible. Like, I don't know, I'm shooting stuff for myself. Like I've fully gone. Like I had a lot of messages on Instagram that people were like, oh, have you quit photography? I was like, Jesus Christ. Because I work really slowly. And I was just talking to somebody this morning of how difficult it is to manage yourself and to come up with ideas and then go and get the energy to go and do it. Like it's really, really hard. I struggle with it. I probably should have gone in the army or something so that I'd have somebody telling me what to do all the time. I'd be a lot happier. But now I'm just like in this constant state of like, oh, what should I do? Is it good? Is it bad? And then it's an extraordinary amount of money and time and effort that you spend doing something. And yeah, of course the result can be that people are just like, silly little thing. Not going to buy that.
So I'm more curious than ever to see this second project. But we have to wait until February, right?
Yeah, hopefully February. For the love of God, I hope February. Because again, I'm in that stage of like, ever want to see it ever again. So you get that? I'm sure everybody gets that.
What?
Like about the projects as you're working on it. And when you're done, you're so done that you're just like, never want to see it ever again.
Yeah, I understand. But yeah, we can also do another episode with that book just before it will release. So it can be nice.
That'd be nice. Then it's new stories to tell that are like maybe even crazier than.
So because you want to launch during Paris Photo and you have now this chance, let's do the episode for Paris Photo, and you can go around Paris Photo with your iPhone and show the episode, saying, "Look, this is the book."
Yeah, exactly. That'd be good.
Okay, thank you so much, Maria. It was a beautiful hour. Also,
thank you so much.
Also quite funny.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Thank you so much to everybody. Thank you, Maria, again, and see you really soon with the next book. Okay.
See you very soon.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Ciao, ciao.